So for me, there was some poetry in 3 years on as a result of the hell that I've been through in the intervening 3 years. And for those that don't know, I'm still fighting criminal charges and all sorts of nonsense out of my activities standing up for human rights during the COVID era. And so there was some poetry there for me to be able to go on the third anniversary of that day when I took a really fateful, life-changing decision and said yes to speaking at that protest. 3 years later, here I am. Someone has backed me. I've got funding, and we're launching a really exciting new media platform that is going to change the face of Australian media forever. So there was some poetry for me there. But really fundamentally, what I spoke of on that day 3 years ago, and what I spoke of since at other events and protests, was the utter and absolute disrespect that our political class has for our veterans. They use them as props, and many veterans know this. You speak to them in private, they know this. They don't show up to these big public events because they don't want to be used as a political prop. And these suits, these political class, political animals stand up the front there and use glowing language about our veterans, which our veterans deserve. And they speak of freedom, and they speak of sacrifice, and they speak of all of these things that they have absolutely no understanding of. And they're not speaking about them because they actually care. They're speaking about them because they politically need to be seen to be speaking about them. They need the PR. They need the Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10 news to be putting them up on the screens that night. It's a political stunt, and they're using our soldiers as a backdrop. I want to see an ANZACS service where not a single politician gets up the front. Then I'll start, if they're there and they're paying their respects and they're just standing in the crowd, invisible, not set apart from all of the other people. That's where our politicians should be on that day. And the only people that stand up the front should be veterans themselves. They should be the ones doing all of the formalities up the front. And then I'll believe that politicians actually care and actually want to pay their respects. But for as long as they're getting that attention and that moment in the sun, it is all about them. And it gets worse because it's those very same politicians that are actually piece by piece stripping away the very freedoms and the very quality of life that our ANZACS fought for. There was a reason they went to war. They believed in something. They believed in the Australia that they lived in, or the New Zealand in the case of obviously New Zealand ANZACS. They believed in where they lived and the values and the freedoms that we had. And it was thanks to them that we built just one of the most incredible places to live. And I won the lottery when I was born here. I'm not hating on Australia at all. It's a phenomenal place to live. But bit by bit, layer by layer, like a potato peeler, we're stripping away those freedoms. And we saw that happen very, very quickly during the COVID era, but it's been happening for decades, little bit by little bit, piece by piece. And it's being done by those very same politicians that stand up at the cenotaph on Anzac Day and grandstand and talk all about freedom and all about sacrifice, whilst using those soldiers, those people who made those sacrifices, as props for their own political purposes as they take away the very rights and freedoms that those people fought for. I just think it is one of the most sickening and cynical exercises of PR that I've ever seen in my life. It turns my stomach. And so when I realized that we had the opportunity to launch on Anzac Day, and not to disrespect Anzac Day or divert attention away from where it ought to be on Anzac Day, we launched in the afternoon specifically to avoid the morning. That morning is where the services happen and where our attention should be 100% on the veterans and remembering and honouring their sacrifices. We launched in the afternoon for the purpose of saying, hey, we're on to you. And we are going to stand up for the truth, and we're going to stand up for freedom, regardless of what the rest of the media does and regardless of what our political class do. We don't have to fight a war to defend our freedom, at least not right now, thankfully. But we do still have to defend our freedom in the ways that are relevant in our world right now. And that means politically and in the war of ideas and in the media. And that is exactly what the Aussie Wire is designed to do. And that is why I felt it was appropriate to launch on the afternoon of Anzac Day.